So it varies. All right, let's talk about this idea of destiny. Title of the talk today is It Destiny? So let's talk about this idea of destiny that you hear people talk about a lot in our culture, throughout the world culture, worldwide, for quite frankly. And you know, maybe you've had, I wonder if any of you have had this experience or heard of people who have had experiences where you remember making choices, or you have a feeling, maybe you don't clearly remember, but you have this sense, this feeling that you may have made choices before you came into this lifetime to sort of set the stage a little bit, if you will, maybe plan things out as best you could before coming into this lifetime, maybe even making some agreements with people to connect with them in this lifetime. Some people have these memories. You may or may not have had this, but I'm going to talk a little bit about this idea, especially for those who have heard about this or heard of people who have this sort of experience. And then we're going to also talk just generally about this idea of destiny, the way people use it in sports, in life, relationships, in various scenarios. But I want to mention a story. I'm not going to get into the details of it, but just very briefly, you can read it in my book. That's my new book coming out. That's coming out a week from Tuesday. There's a story in there about a little boy. He started having these memories when he was 2 and 3 years old. And this is a documented case that if you go on the University of Virginia Medical School website, they have a whole department that was set up in the late 60s, 1967 or something like that. And they started collecting case studies of kids, and they're mostly 2 to 5, 2 to 7 years old from around the world with these unusual experiences where they remember stuff in between lifetimes. They also remember stuff that about other lifetimes that affect them now in this lifetime that are inexplicable. You can't explain these things logically in the normal way that people talk about things unless you introduce this idea of other lifetimes. It makes no other sense otherwise. There's no other way they would be able to know the level of detail that they have of these other lifetimes before this lifetime. But just one little quick snippet of a part of the story that I talk about in my book. It's about this boy. He remembers himself being a World War II fighter pilot. Now this boy is, I don't know how old he is now, 5 or 6 or 7 years old now. So he was born fairly recently. But he remembers being a fighter pilot in World War II. And he has all these details, names of his ship, names of his friends, which later were corroborated by looking at, the lists of the crew members and so forth, all of that kind of stuff. But the piece of the story I want to mention to you that he also talks about is he remembers choosing his parents before he came into this lifetime several years ago. And what he remembered, and he told his parents this, and again, this is the kid's now, he's 2 or 3, 4 years old when he's telling his parents this, that he remembers seeing them and following them around, not physically following them around, but with his mind, his soul, his consciousness was following them around in what he referred to as the Pink Hotel. And it blew his parents' mind away because they never told him about going on this vacation in Hawaii, in Honolulu, Hawaii, and they stayed at the Royal Hawaiian Hotel. And the Royal Hawaiian Hotel, if you Google it, it's, I think there's like a tagline that they call that hotel, and it's called the Pink Princess of the Pacific, I think is what it's called. Anyway, it's a pink hotel. It's a famous hotel. It's on the beach in Waikiki, and it's a pink hotel, like really pink, like the color of flamingos, pink, bright pink hotel. The whole huge hotel is pink. And it's made of certain coral that's pink. That's why it's pink. I think that's why it's pink. Anyway, but he remembers following his parents around. His parents went to that hotel on vacation, and he was conceived 2 to 4 weeks after that vacation. That was long before he was conceived as this boy whose name is James Leininger. That's the boy's name. How could that be, right? So it seems like he chose his parents before he came into this lifetime. So does that mean that was his destiny to be there? It was their destiny to be his parents, that it was kind of predetermined? How does that fit in with this whole idea of destiny, where people, you hear people use the phrase, it was meant to be, right? It was meant to be, it was destiny. The fact that we met was meant to be, it was destiny. Was it predetermined? Was it absolutely the case that it would happen? That's what most people mean when they say it was meant to be, that it had to happen, that it was destiny. So I want to talk about that. I want to unbundle this a little bit, break this down a little bit. You've heard me talk about this idea of free will. Free will meaning we have choice all the time to make different decisions throughout our lives. And we can choose to do this, we can choose to do that. There's many forks in the road that we come to in life where there's a fork. We could go this way, we could go that way. If we go this way, certain things may happen. We go this way, certain things may happen. And then there's another fork, and then there's another fork, and there's another fork. There's choices we can make all the time in our lives. And I think we as individual minds have free will all the time to make whatever choices we make. Well, if that's the case, then there's going to be so many variations on these choices that there is no way that things could be predetermined. Predetermination and free will do not go together. You either believe in free will or you believe in predetermination. You cannot have both. It's logically impossible to have both. And you see people do this all the time where they mix the two. I was just watching a Tony Robbins documentary the other day, and he tells this story in it where, and I'm not picking on him, I mean, many people do this, and they conflate and confuse this idea of destiny, where things are meant to be, and predetermination, and they think that God is controlling things and manipulating things to make things happen in a certain way, or God or their guardian angel or whoever. I'm not saying you have to believe in God. I'm saying this is the way people talk. And he told this story about his high school teacher saying, you don't see yourself, but I see you. I get who you are. I see who you are. And you should go to this competition and you should compete. And he went to the competition and he won this speech competition that weekend when he was in high school. And that changed his life. I totally buy that his teacher, quote unquote, saw him and saw who he was, saw potential in him. And I totally get that he could go to that competition and win that competition, speech competition. Absolutely. But does that mean he jumps to the conclusion that God, that was his destiny, God was looking out for him, and God was steering him in that way? Well, maybe there was some friend or entity or whoever. I just call them minds. You've heard me talk about this. Souls or minds. mind on the other side of the veil, mind on this side of the veil. Doesn't matter to me. The mind on this side of the veil was his speech teacher in high school. The mind on the other side of the veil could have been some other entity, could have been his grandmother, could have been his dead grandfather. Who the heck knows? Some mind on the other side of the veil whispering in the mind of his speech teacher to say this to him. All of that is fine with me, is possible and fine with me. I totally buy that could happen. What I don't buy is that there's some entity pulling the strings, making him do things, and meaning that he does not have free will. Because he talks in his seminars all about free will. He tells his 5,000, 3,000 people in the audience, you control your life, you make choices. Well, that is inconsistent with this idea of saying, oh, but God did this. It was God telling me, and it was a message from God, and blah, 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 blah. It was my destiny. It was your choice, Tony, to go to that speech competition. Tony, you could choose at any time to not listen to that speech teacher. That speech teacher, if he or she was being whispered to by your dead grandfather or by some entity that you refer to as God, even, I'll give you that, was whispering to him. It was his mind's choice to not listen to that and not listen and not tell you. It was your mind's choice always to not listen to the speech teacher's advice and to not go to that speech competition. It was your choice to go there, and it was your choice to do your best job there. It was always your choice, and it was not somebody else's choice, some God, some entity, some deity on the other side of the veil. You've heard me talk many times about this side and the other side of the veil, how people frequently think that if you get messages from the other side of the veil, they're somehow better, they're somehow higher quality, they're somehow meaning that that's the truth, that you have to listen to that. If you go to a psychic, for example, no, you always have choice. Number one, you always have choice. Number two, it's always their mind filtering information to give to you, and then you choose to listen to it or not listen to it. But keep in mind, just the fact that it's coming from the other side of the veil, from somebody who doesn't have a body in the way the usual body, the physical body, the way we think of it. They may have a light or an energy body, but just because it's coming from the other side doesn't mean it's truthful or accurate. It's truthful in the sense, maybe truthful in the sense that that person or mind on the other side believes it to be true. But it doesn't mean that it absolutely is going to take place. That's my point. Destiny does not mean absolute truth in that way. There is no such thing as destiny. Absolute, actual, it's going to happen that way. It absolutely will happen. Just like in football. It's our destiny to win the Super Bowl. People can say stuff like that. Football players say that stuff all the time. It's our destiny to win the World Cup. You can say that, but why do you bother to play the game if you really believe that? So my point is, let's use language that is accurate, because otherwise we confuse ourselves. And then we make ourselves miserable because we've confused ourselves using really stupid, inaccurate, inappropriate language. So let's smarten up a little bit. Use language that's consistent. If we're telling the audience in our seminar, you control your life, make choices, nobody's telling you what to do, then don't then also tell them that God told you what to do and that you had to listen to that because this came from God. Don't confuse people and don't confuse yourself. Use language and use theories and concepts and ideas consistently so that we can create more enjoyment and effectiveness in our life and in other people's lives. That's my point. You see, we may express ourselves in this lifetime or before this lifetime to other minds and say, hey, let's get together and let's do this. Let's talk about before and let's talk about during. So before this lifetime, hypothetically speaking, we may get together with our friends while we're in this transition state. You may call it heaven, you can call it, label it whatever you want, Valhalla, different cultures call it different things. But you may be on this other side in your mental state, but not in a physical body yet. And you may get together with some of your friends and say, hey, let's get together and try to get together this next lifetime. Let's go down the chute. You know, people sometimes refer to going down the chute, the tunnel, before they get born. And let's try to connect again. You may decide that, but people have to reciprocate. Nobody, just because you throw this idea out, and people have to reciprocate. They have to agree to it, right? And even if they agree to it, like I said, we come down into this lifetime, and there's many forks in the road. There's many choices that each of us can make. And some of those circumstances that affect our lives are out of our control. They are controlled by other people, other minds who are making choices in their way, are affecting our mind and our friends' minds in different ways. And so there's all this effect that's going on, different minds affecting each other in this different way that affects our lives. We have control over choices that we make. We don't have control over choices that others make. And that's the way it should be. Each mind should be sovereign, unique, individual in its own way to make its own choices. We don't want other people making choices for us, do we? And most of us live our lives believing that and acting that way. Well, don't confuse this idea of destiny with that, all right? Can we create probabilities? Absolutely, yes. We can create probabilities. So back to this story that I've been kind of running through this discussion. I talked about on the other side of the veil. Let's talk about on this side of the veil. In physical reality, we can get together with a group of friends and let's say, hey, let's do a startup company. We'll start up a company. Let's create a board of directors. Great. You be on the board. I'll be on the board. We have our board of directors. We create we have a strategic planning meeting. We're doing a startup of a company together. We come up with a certain set of ideas and principles, and we have a mission, and we have a goal, and we have a business plan. All of that's laid out, right? There's certain reciprocity that exists there, meaning we've agreed with each other about certain parts of this strategic plan and business plan to do the startup company. Okay, great. Does that mean that the startup company absolutely is going to happen and be successful? No. We get it created, but there's no guarantees there. It's no different. That is no different. I mean, I'm sure you all understand that, but there's no guarantees. It's just like a marriage. Okay, you get together in a relationship. We say, okay, we have a plan. We're going to have kids. We want to love each other. We want to support each other for the rest of our lives. We take these marriage vows. You have this ceremony, the whole 9 yards, right? Does that guarantee? Because you had certain reciprocity and agreement, reciprocity meaning exchanging ideas between the two people involved in the relationship and agreed that you're going to get married? Does that guarantee that everything that you've laid out in your plan is going to happen in the way you've laid it out? Of course not. There are all kinds of circumstances and other choices that you too are going to make during your lifetime together, in your marriage together, and then other people are going to make certain choices. I'm going to get laid off 5 times in my life. Did I know that? Was that guaranteed? Not necessarily guaranteed, but it happened and I had to deal with that. Did that affect my marriage? Absolutely. Was that a determining factor in how the marriage went? I don't know, but it certainly affected it. All of that stuff that happens in our lives affects us. It affects our choices. It makes this whole concept of predetermination, things being set out, that there is a destiny to things, it puts it into perspective, doesn't it? I mean, our lives, the reality of our lives, do not match this idea of destiny happening. Certain things we can create, we can increase the probability of happening, but absolutely will it happen? We cannot know. That's my point. All right? Now, what's the point of all of this? Even though it feels magical sometimes when we meet somebody, it feels so incredible. There's a reality to that. We meet somebody we've been looking for such a long time. And that is accurate. That's real. Just like in my relationship with Kim. It's magical. It's like, whoa, look, it feels like I've been looking for her for thousands of years. Again, or hundreds of years, or thousands, a long time. And meeting up with her again, because we've been together before, it seems. Well, okay, great. But was it absolutely going to happen this lifetime? Not necessarily. Certain choices are made. You never know. But did it happen? Yes. And does it feel magical? And does it feel really like it was meant to be? It may feel that way emotionally. But what I'm saying is, it's important to understand intellectually what's going on is choices being made. Why is that important? That's important because it helps us acknowledge our own power. The power of our own minds as individual minds, I think, is underrated by most people. The human mind is incredibly powerful, and the choices we can make as a human mind are incredibly powerful. And when we are not human, you could say, when we're no longer in a physical body, what are we? We're not a human mind. We're just a mind. Our minds are equally powerful. And my point is, in the here and now, let's make our minds more powerful. And let's get away from this idea of giving credit to some other entity or some other beings or whatever. And let's take control of our lives as much as we can by increasing the power of ourselves inside as much as we can. Turn within, connect ourselves through meditation intimately, strongly within ourselves, so that we're not like a football being thrown around so much in life. Yes. Did I get laid off 5 times? Absolutely. Did I feel like I was thrown around like a football at that time? Absolutely. Did I take control of the situation as best as I could and move forward from that? Absolutely. What happens to many people, unfortunately, is they don't. They feel like they've been thrown around in life because circumstances outside of their control do happen, and they feel defeated. They feel overwhelmed and defeated, and they don't move on because the mind is not strong enough inside. They have valued themselves only on the outside by stuff that they own, by jobs that they have, by relationships they have with certain people. No, we need to value ourselves from the inside out. And by valuing ourselves from the inside out, we strengthen ourselves from the inside out. And then we can control our lives as much as is possible. I say as much as is possible because we cannot control everything. Because as I said, there's all kinds of other influences going on caused by other minds thinking different things, including the 2008 crash of our economy, which caused one of my layoffs. So that was out of my control. I'm not controlling all the minds who are thinking from a political and an economic and a financial standpoint globally. I'm not controlling all those minds. I'm controlling how I respond and react to the situation of being laid off at that time. And so by strengthening ourselves from the inside out, we increase the likelihood we're going to have a happy and productive, effective life. That's my point. That's my point of moving away from this idea of it's all about destiny and it's all about what's meant to be, to taking control of our lives as much as we can from the inside of ourselves and then expressing it outside. All right? Because if we're always looking for what's meant to be, we're external, we're external, we're external. We're not internal. We're looking at what out here is what should happen and what is meant to be and what's meant to be and what's happening out here. We are not strengthening ourselves inside. We are falling prey to the same illusion that most people have, which is we should judge ourselves by how much money we have. We should judge ourselves by what neighborhood we live in, where our kids go to school, what kind of relationships we have with important people, all of that. That is illusion. That is not where we draw our real happiness from. Our happiness and our security comes from inside ourselves and how we feel about ourselves. Okay? So that in a nutshell, you can read this essay that I have on this in greater detail on the website about destiny on my turningwithin.org website. And it's great to see you again this session, see you in a month. And in a month, we'll talk about a new, a different subject, and I will lay it out to you in an email. I haven't decided yet what the next session is going to be, but I will let you know. I will let you know as soon as I decide the next topic for our discussion. Okay, I'll post it on the Turning Within Facebook page and also on the Overcoming the Fear of Death Facebook page. So if you haven't been on those Facebook pages, by the way, you should just, use Facebook, you can just type in the search window, just type in Turning Within, and it'll take you to the Turning Within Facebook page. Type in Overcoming the Fear of Death, and it'll bring you to that Facebook page. And you should, if you like it, click on like. It'll automatically post stuff to you that I post up there. It'll post it in your notifications. So I'll put the next subject up in there that we'll discuss next month. So first Sunday of every month will be the next session. So the first Sunday in September. Check out my book coming out a week from this Tuesday, August 16th. Is the release date on Overcoming the Fear of Death. Go to the overcomingthefearofdeath.org website, and you can buy my book there a week from Tuesday. Looking forward to seeing you. If you have any questions about any of the stuff we talked today about meditation or about this idea of destiny, feel free to email me. You know how to reach me. Happy to have conversations with you that way. And have a great month. Take care. Good to see you again.